We're starting in a minute's time. Thank you very much for joining us. Happy International Women's Day to everyone. Please can we put on our cameras? I'd love to see our beautiful faces. Thank you. To our Age Network YouTube channel. We'll also be hosting a question and answer section with the panelists at the end of the summit. So if you have an additional question that you want to be discussed, please chat it in the type it in the chat box, or if you prefer, raise your hands to ask the question. And in case you experience connectivity issues with the Jitsi session, please enable low bandwidth mode and reduce video quality. Thank you very much. And please, I would love us to kindly put on our cameras, please. So we'll move further into the summit. Let's put on our cameras, please. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, hi, Eva. So the African Girl Empowerment Network is very happy to host today its summit, Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. Now, why do we commemorate today? The International Women's Day is a time to reflect on progress made, to call for change, to celebrate acts of courage and determination by extraordinary women who have played an extraordinary role in the history of their countries and communities. So, like I said, I'd love for us to mute our microphones during the summit to cancel background noises, and we record the summit and upload it later into our Age Network YouTube channel. We would also host a question and answer section with the panelists at the end of the summit. So if you have an additional question that you want to be discussed, please type it in the chat box, or if you prefer, raise your hand to ask the questions. And in case you experience connectivity issues with the Jitsi session, please enable low bandwidth mode and reduce video quality. So the African Girls Empowerment Network is very happy to host today its summit, Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. Why do we commemorate today? The International Women's Day is a time to reflect on progresses made, to call for change, to celebrate acts of courage and determination by ordinary women who have played an extraordinary role in the history of their countries and communities. And to count for that, we have eight amazing panelists that we'll introduce very shortly. But first, let me introduce very briefly to you what the African Girl Empowerment Network is and what our main goals are. The summit is being hosted by African Girls Empowerment Network, which is a not-for-profit organization focused on advancing gender equality across Africa by empowering young women and girls, as well as local feminist girl-led groups and organizations in Africa. Now, one of the main goals of the Age Network is to pursue girls' empowerment through education, since education is a driving force for girls to be independent. We've carried out many major projects to promote women leadership also and financial inclusion. The Age Network also works very closely with other organizations aimed to end child marriage and female genital mutilation, and to protect girls' sexual and reproductive health rights in order to prevent unwanted pregnancies and unsafe abortions. And now, I would love to introduce to you our keynote speakers and panelists that have kindly agreed to join us today in the conversation on how women can achieve leadership in a COVID-19 world. Want to truly thank all of them. We are so pleased to have you. We're so pleased to have a wide representation of your different organizations that work towards protecting children, girls, and women's rights. Firstly, we celebrate you, Nnedi Jane Ugwu, Programs Officer of the Society for Improvement of Rural People, SIRP. Hello, Ma, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Also, we have Mojisola Florence, the Executive Director of Women for Peace and Gender Equality Initiative. Are you here with us, Ma? Thank you very much for coming. Hello, Ma. Thank you very much for coming, Ma. We also have Abra Stokely, the Executive Director of Grange Schools. Thank you very much for coming. Are you here with us, Ma?
I am. Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Thank you very much for coming. And we have Tope Imasekha. She's the Executive Director of Women Impacting Nigeria. Is she here with us? I think she'll be joining us soon. Yes. We also have Comfort Ikpeme. She's the coordinator and SRHR trainer with Girls Power Initiative, Calabar. Are you here with us, Ma? Thank you very much for coming.
Yes, I am. Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Hello. Oh, thank you very much for joining us. We also have Margaret Honor. She's the Executive Director of Safe Haven Development Initiative. Are you here with us, Ma?
Yes, good morning, everybody. I'm glad to be here to see all your beautiful faces.
Wow, so glad to have you. Thank you very much. And we have Blessing Odekina. She's the Programs Officer, Daughters of Abraham Foundation.
Hello,
are
good
you
morning,
here?
everybody. Yeah, I can hear you. Good morning. Nice to have you here. And nice for having me on the platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And also my humble self, Elizabeth Jonah, Head of Operations African Girls Empowerment Network. I sincerely welcome you all to this amazing summit. I know we're going to have a very rewarding session today. So quickly, we'll be discussing the impact and effects of COVID-19 on young women, how we can transform ourselves to combat the second phase of the COVID-19 effect, and also challenging cultures. How can young women fulfill their leadership potentials politically, socially, and economically, despite the gender inequality factor? And also discussing what the government and civil organizations, religious leaders, development partners, and heads of government can do to challenge the status quo and also advance young women's leadership and inclusive governance in Nigeria. Now, looking at COVID-19 cases worldwide, as of today, we had 117 million confirmed positive cases worldwide and 2.5 million deaths. Obviously, the thing just keeps escalating and escalating. And in the case of Nigeria, we've seen that more than 159,000 positive cases have been recorded, and we have like 1,923 deaths reported. The disease is having dramatic consequences in most countries of the world, but particularly COVID-19 is affecting girls and young women over men. And we see that COVID-19 would surely hit women the hardest. Now, due to figures from research conducted, we see that 1 in 3 women experience gender-based violence, and legal restrictions have kept 2.7 billion women worldwide from accessing the same choice of jobs as men. And also, less than 25% of parliamentarians in the world were women as of 2019. And on average, women around the world spend more than twice as many hours as men doing unpaid work. And lastly, women across the world currently bear the majority of childcare. Now, before we move further with a keynote speech from speaker speaker, Mojisola Florence, will take a quick look at COVID-19 and how it affects women. We know that the mortality rate is very high and women are faced with problems of their own. But now, in addition to psychological, cultural, and economic effects, the pandemic is really leaving great scars. And due to all of this, we'll be discussing how women can achieve an equal future amidst this post pandemic. So, now before we move further, I would love to have a keynote speech by Mojisola Akinsanya as regards the summit theme. Ma, are you please? Can you hear me?
She's having problem with connection.
Yeah, yes. Okay, while we wait for her to settle the old connection issues, please, Miss Nnedi Jane, can we have you? Miss Nnedi Jane, can we have you to give your speech, please?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes,
Oh,
I can hear you.
all right.
Yes,
Good
we can hear
morning.
you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I would love to share a brief presentation.
Thank
Hello,
you.
can you hear me?
Oh, Madam Ojisola, yes, we can hear you. Yes, yes,
Okay, I
we
just
can hear
want
you,
to
ma'am.
give my quick keynote
Sorry.
speech before the. Yes, I'm delighted to deliver the keynote for this International Women's Day 2021. As we all are aware, 8th of March each year is celebrated worldwide. And it's a global day set aside to celebrate the social, the economic, cultural, and political achievements of women in all walks of life. The theme for this year is Women in Leadership and Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. As people all over the world, globally, they choose to challenge and encouraging others to pledge support for International Women's Day. And this purpose of celebrating this day is to acknowledge the contribution of women to strengthening their international peace and to recognize that the participation, development, and equality of women is essential for the attainment of social justice and the full enjoyment of human rights. I commend the organization and the team that put this together, and to all the women who have been told that they are too loud, too emotional,
Thank you.
too ambitious, too difficult, too bossy, too much, and all the stereotypes that have held you back for far too long. Please go there today as we celebrate the International Women's Day to claim your seats and be at the table, because we are the generation for equality. I want to say thank you to all women out there, and I want us to celebrate ourselves by shining light to all women in the public space, in the civil society space, and ordinary informal citizens that are doing well to make sure that women have a seat at the table. Thank you and welcome to this conversation.
Thank you very much, ma. Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much.
Thank you, ma. Yes, that was a very beautiful keynote speech. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much, ma. So, Ned Jane, please, we can have you. We can have you now. So sorry.
okay, so like I said, I would love to share a brief presentation that will help guide my keynote speech. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I want to
Good
first of all
morning.
start by thanking the organizers of this wonderful event. like the first speaker said, this is a time for us to look back, reflect on our progress. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, okay. So today is International Women's Day on the 8th of March, which is celebrated on the 8th of March every year. And this is a time the world pauses to celebrate the contributions of women towards fashioning a better world. It offers us a time to reflect on the progress we have made so far on addressing the barriers and issues that prevent women and girls all over the world from achieving their dreams. This year's theme, Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in COVID-19 World, is aligned with the priority theme of the 65th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, which is women's full and effective participation and decision-making in public life, as well as the elimination of violence for achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls. So who are leading the fight against the COVID-19? Women. Women are in the forefront of this pandemic all over the world as healthcare professionals, teachers, domestic caregivers, community organizers. Sorry, I repeated domestic caregivers. Majority of the countries that have been more successful in stemming the tide of the pandemic and responding to its health and broader socioeconomic impacts are headed by women, and such countries are Denmark, Ethiopia, Finland, Germany, Iceland, New Zealand, and Slovakia. The first case of the COVID-19 in Nigeria was diagnosed by a female doctor in the name of Dr. Amarachukwu Allison. No doubt her efforts contributed to the relative low prevalence of the disease in Nigeria, saving millions of lives. Just because of these her little efforts, Nigerians began to believe that actually these COVID-19 diseases actually existed in the country, and people started taking precaution. So if not for her efforts, I don't know, maybe we would have still been living in this denial that there is nothing like COVID-19. Still, COVID-19 has affected women more. Despite all this, despite the efforts women put in the public places, it is still affecting them more. And how? On their socio-economic status, there is increased domestic care burdens. We all know that during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown, majority of women who had work to do had to take their work to the house. And in so doing, she also has to manage juggling between responsibilities at home and as well to meet up with the deadline at the office. And this increased their burden of care. There was an increase in gender-based violence. So many cases of gender-based violence were reported. In communities of our intervention, one of the communities, there was a rise in female genital mutilation because the quota in that community needed a source of to make money, a source of living because of the lockdown. So she had to take up back her trade of circumcising female babies. There is also, under the public policy spaces, there is poor representation of women. For instance, in the COVID-19 Nigeria's National Task Force, we could only discover that out of the 12 members, women are only 2. Now you ask yourself, how then can women fully represent? How then can women talk about issues as it affects them? It's difficult because men dominate the system. No woman is heading any of the COVID tests. In fact, we are talking about national now. Let's bring it down to our states here, in all the states of the Southeast. There is no single woman leading the COVID-19 task force. So whatever information focuses on the general, nobody now cares to look at how does this pandemic affect women. But if we have enough women representation, they will on their own side say, look, this is how these things are affecting us. And then policies will be made in place to address those challenges. So what can we do according to the United Nations Economic and Social Council Report 2020? We need to strengthen normative, legal and regulatory frameworks. This is to ensure the elimination of violence against women and girls, and as well ensure active participation in policy spaces. We need to strengthen gender responsive institutional reforms. to ensure gender-sensitive approaches to the COVID-19 pandemic, just like I mentioned before, by appointing women and gender equality advocates to leadership positions and decision-making bodies. We also need to increase the availability of high-quality financing in support of women's participation in public life. For instance, women are not given the opportunity to compete for public spaces. I remember some time ago when a lady came out for presidential candidate sometime. She got only one vote, meaning she got the vote for herself. But if there is a quality financing that will support women, definitely more women will be out there to compete for these leadership positions. We need to also strengthen women's voice and leave no one behind in the public life, thereby implementing awareness-raising measures and sensitize communities and religious leaders, the media, more importantly, men and boys, and different generations of women to counter social norms that restrict women's rights and participation in public life and decision making, and to take deliberate actions just to adjust these norms. What we have done as an organization, because we focus more on the rights of women and issues that are affecting, to tackle some of the effects it's posed on their socio-economic status. We distributed food palliatives to cushion the effects of the food security. We gave them primary personal protective equipment, PPEs for their safety, and then most importantly, initiated an online counseling sessions for women facing gender-based violence and increased burden of care at the home front. Also, to facilitate a more inclusive policy space for delivering public services, we trained senior policy makers, that is permanent secretaries and directors, on gender-responsive budgeting. The picture you are seeing is one of the training days. This is facilitated by the executive director of SIRP Nigeria. Therefore, I call us to action. Women are great. We have great potentials. We drive progress. Women have that ability to make things move, to turn little things and drive the process around. Therefore, we all need to rise and work to create an equal future for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that powerful presentation. We have our representative. I welcome Ms. Sarah Imakabi. Thank you for coming, Ms. Sarah Imakabi. She's representing one of our panelists, Tope Imasekha, from Women Impacting Nigeria. Thank you also, Nnedi Jane. That was a very beautiful PowerPoint presentation. It really highlighted all what women have been facing. Thank you very much. And I'm so glad that your organization has been doing a lot to actually move women forward in all spheres of life.
Thank you. Thank you,
can
sir.
we kindly mute our microphone? You're welcome, ma'am. So now we'll be going to the impact and effects of COVID-19 on women. How can we transform ourselves to combat the second phase of the COVID-19 effect? Firstly, we're looking at the effects that we've seen so far, just like what Madam Jane said. We see that women are actually still facing high risks of infection. 70% of healthcare professionals worldwide are women, and women are primary caregivers in their homes and their communities. Most homes, like 90% of homes, are being managed by women. And looking at the aspect of domestic violence, that's another effect of COVID-19, another negative effect of COVID-19. The domestic violence has increased during the crisis. Lockdown for women means lockdown with their abusers, locked in with their abusers. And we see that women have experienced several forms of violence in the household because of increased tension due to lockdown, job losses, and family community structures break down. Yes, women's biggest challenges during the COVID-19, they worry their performances are being negatively judged because of caregiving responsibilities, financial insecurity, and anxiety due to the lockdown, as a lot of companies have been struggling financially. And in some areas, up to 95% of female workers work in informal jobs with no security, job security, or safety net. Now, talking about negative effects on the issue of their sexual and reproductive health, challenges they face, a lack of access to essential health services due to shutdown of services that ultimately cost more deaths than the pandemic itself, difficulty accessing contraceptives and other essential services such as safe abortion has denied millions of women the right to control their bodies and lives. And the majority of health workers are women, so that put them at the highest risk as they continue to carry the burden of care. Now, solutions to all of this, um, providing protection measures for our girls and women against domestic violence, which includes child marriages, female circumcision, rape, and also guaranteeing access to justice to prosecute their perpetrators during and after the lockdown, and also working towards gathering data from girls and women about how COVID-19 crisis impacts on their lives to aid in implementing the gender-sensitive intervention as well as post-COVID-19 response. I'll still go back to what our keynote speaker said, Nnedi Jane, about the first woman to discover COVID-19 in Nigeria. That was the first person to actually discover COVID-19 in Nigeria was actually a woman. Wow. And the gender inequality is just too strong, especially in Nigeria. So now the questions we'll be discussing today is: one, how can CSOs, development partners, religious leaders, and government secure health protective measurements and psychological support for women in rural areas? This is the first question we'll be discussing this morning. Is anyone that would love to answer the question? The first question: how can CSOs, development partners, religious leaders, and government secure health protective measurements and psychological support for women in rural areas? This is the first question we'll be discussing now.
Okay, the question is, what are the health protective measurements? Is it how can CSOs, development partners, religious leaders, and government secure health protective measurements and psychological support for women in rural areas? Okay, just like I mentioned in my presentation, you will see, like I said, that we had to intensify efforts to go back to these rural communities to meet with these women. And of course, in doing that, in doing any intervention for women and girls, you must have to bring in the men and the boys. Because at that point, we understood that a lot of tension, there was a rise in a lot of tension. Imagine a man that lives on daily bread, he makes money from maybe a day job he's paid, and due to the lockdown, this person is asked to stay at home with his wife. And then maybe the lady also has little or petty trade to do, and they're just stuck in the same house. You know that tensions will rise, and it will give rise to a lot of psychological harm, a lot of domestic violence, and other issues. So CSOs have an important role to play, because CSOs majorly, their interventions normally cuts across rural communities. So CSOs should intensify their efforts, go back into these communities, meet with these men, conduct sensitization trainings for them. In fact, even on how to manage their stress level. Then before we now bring in the women to help them. That is why we initiated that online counseling sessions, because some of them could not travel, some do not have money to come, to come out, or so we just had to find a way. So we initiated that online counseling. All you need to do is just flash the line, we'll call back and spend time talking to you and your partner. This is a way to help them cope with the stress. Then also, we meet with religious leaders, we meet with traditional, CSOs needs to meet with traditional leaders to sensitize them, talk to them, to understand the impact this imposes on the women. sorry to say that during this lockdown and since this pandemic started, some churches, some religious leaders have also been in denial that this sickness is an attack on the church. And this is the information that is being passed out to women, men out there in their congregation. So we need to go back to give them proper education for them to understand that this thing is here. We need to live with it, and this is the impact it is having in the society. So when we do this and then go back to the drawing table, go back and then get these key stakeholders on board, it will go a long way in providing that psychological support women need in rural areas. Thank you.